everybody, it is time now for my OU Weekly Matchup Show. The Sooners, coming off the thrilling overtime victory over Oklahoma State in Bedlam, will try to make it double digits in victories and perhaps nail down an at-large bid at least for the BCS. But they know that they'll have it work out for them Saturday morning in Fort Worth against a TCU squad that feels pretty good about themselves after winning Thanksgiving night at Texas. It's the Sooners and the Horned Frogs Saturday morning, and as you see, it's 11 a.m. kickoff on ESPN. OU will come in as the favorite, but they know they can't take Texas Christian for granted. Before we talk about the game, and before we talk about the bowl scenarios for Oklahoma, you probably heard some things about the University of Tennessee and Bob Stoops. If you haven't, not too long ago, Tennessee, they've struggled for a while now. The Volunteers fired Derek Dooley. It wasn't working out between they and the Vols, so Dooley no longer their head coach, obviously leaving a vacancy, and Tennessee is a premier job, and there were rumors that Bob Stoops would be entertaining Tennessee. Well, if you're thinking about that, don't worry about it. Bob Stoops says he loves his job in Norman, and looks like he's going to be staying put. And you have to remember that Stoops in the past has gotten job offers, you know, from various programs. You know, the NFL has even come calling, like the Cleveland Browns, and Stoops has, you know, turned them away time and time and time again. He's been the coach of Oklahoma since 1999. He loves it here. His family loves it here, and it's going to stay here. I think they got a brand new house here not too long ago. So don't have to worry about Bob Stoops going anywhere anytime soon. Talking about the Oklahoma Bowl scenario, you probably heard some various things. Even if Oklahoma wins at TCU on Saturday to go to 10-2, doesn't necessarily mean they're going to get an at-large bid. Initially, we thought that Boise State would be the reason why. Even though Boise State is number 20 in the BCS, and it's not impossible for them to move into the top 16, now we know that it's probably unlikely. Even though they're 15th in the coaches poll, the problem with Boise is that the computer polls hate them big time. They're 30th in the computer polls, so even with the win at Nevada on Saturday, Boise probably won't move up to the top 16, which would eliminate them from any BCS consideration. That's the good news for Oklahoma. The bad news, though, is this weekend. Friday night in particular, the Mid-American Conference Championship between Northern Illinois and the team Oklahoma has to worry about, Kent State. Kent State, who lost by 30 points earlier this year to sorry Kentucky, that's right, to Kentucky, has a shot at playing in a major bowl game and could be the first team ever from the Mid-American Conference to play in a BCS game. I know, hard to believe. The winner of that game between Northern Illinois and Kent State will win the MAC. And if it's Kent State, right now sitting at 17th in the BCS, they probably will move up one spot, at least one spot, come the final BCS standings on Sunday. We know this because UCLA presently is at number 16. UCLA plays at Stanford, who got killed by the Cardinal this past week in the two teams rematch. This time, UCLA and Stanford will play in Stanford for the Pac-12 championship. And unless cows are flying that day, I seriously doubt that UCLA is going to be able to pull off a victory. So the big thing right here to remember is Kent State needs to just move up to number 16. And if they win on Friday, it's more than likely going to happen. I bring this up because according to the BCS, any non-conference champion, non-BCS conference champion who finishes in the top 16 in the final BCS standings and finishes ahead of a BCS conference champion would get an at-large bid for a BCS game. This is where the sorry but Big East Conference comes into play. The Big East is a BCS conference. They don't have anybody close to the top 16, and they won't once all is said and done. Not Rutgers, not Cincinnati, not Louisville. None of them are even going to be close to the top 16 after this weekend. So Kent State wins on Friday night. They are going to steal the final at-large bid in all likelihood, and thus Oklahoma, no matter what they do on Saturday, will not get an at-large. If Kent State wins, Oklahoma with the victory would then have to hope, and boy, oh boy, this really right here is going to make you go for the Maylocks. You have to root for Texas on Saturday night to beat Kansas State. And if that happens, then Oklahoma would win the Big 12 outright and would get the automatic BCS bid and go to the Fiesta. Now, what if that happens? What if Kent State loses, Oklahoma wins, and Kansas State loses? Oklahoma and K-State most likely would both get BCS bids. We know Oklahoma would. And even though Oklahoma, you would think, would be designated for the Fiesta Bowl, seeing how they would win the Big 12 outright, there has been talk about a trade where Oklahoma would go to the Sugar Bowl. Now, the reason for that is because Oklahoma has been to Arizona for bowl games at least 4 times in recent seasons. 4 times since 2007. 3 Fiesta Bowls, and last year in Phoenix for the Insight Bowl. So Oklahoma in general would like a change of scenery if possible, in particular Oklahoma fans. To be able to go to the Sugar Bowl, if the opportunity presented itself, would be better because it would be a different scenery, plus it'd be a much shorter trip to New Orleans as opposed to going to Arizona once again. And for Kansas State, I don't think they would matter. It would matter to them what major bowl they would go to them, so as long as they went to one. So if Kent State lost, Oklahoma won, and K-State lost, you're looking at Oklahoma getting a automatic bid and looking at K-State getting an at-large, and that could mean a swap, meaning that a Fiesta Bowl bid for Oklahoma is likely out, and an at-large automatic bid for Oklahoma means that they would probably be locked into the Sugar Bowl, and they would more than likely play Florida. If Oklahoma does not get a BCS at-large, they're looking at the Cotton Bowl because of the fact that Kent State would have that at-large, that final at-large. So that means that the Sooners would have to settle for the next best thing, and that is the Cotton Bowl at Jerry Jones Stadium in Arlington. And if you're not going to go to a major bowl game, let's face it, the Cotton Bowl is the next best thing. It's in the best stadium in the country, one of the best stadiums in the world. It'd be a 2.5-hour trip for the Sooner fans, and it'd be played in between the BCS games, and it would be in prime time where there would be no other bowl games going on. So basically, you get your own primetime audience, and you'd be going against an SEC team, more than likely LSU or Texas A&M because of proximity. So the game would be able to sell a ton of tickets. That's the scenario. So if OU can win, worst case scenario, you're looking at the Cotton Bowl, but you're hoping for a Kent State loss, and you might be saying, well, Northern Illinois might move up to number 16. That's not impossible, but I'd rather take my chances on Northern Illinois beating Kent State than Kent State winning, because if Kent State wins, they're more than likely going to get to number 16. And thanks to the Big East not getting into the top 16, Kent State would still OU spot. Thank goodness in 2014 we get to that playoff system, and thank goodness the Big East will be weeded out of the 14 playoff, as will those non-majors. Let's talk about the game for a little bit. Oklahoma can't take TCU for granted. We saw what the Horned Frogs did last Thursday night, Thanksgiving night, when they upset Texas. A lot of people wondered if TCU would be a viable team in the Big 12. 2 years ago, went undefeated in the Mountain West Conference, 13-0, finished number 2 in the country, won the Rose Bowl against Wisconsin. A lot of the pundits were saying, yeah, but they came from a non-BCS league. Didn't have to play tough competition all the time. Well, this year, TCU has found out that competition is a little tougher in this league than in the Mountain West. Actually, a lot tougher, especially in the beginning. After starting non-league play really hot, once they got into the Big 12, things got a little bumpy. To their defense, Casey Paul, however, quarterback, had some issues off the field with the DWI. Because of the off-the-field issues, hasn't played for the remainder of this season. They missed him in the Iowa State game at home as Iowa State beat them. After the hot start in which TCU won their first 4 games, the Horned Frogs then lost 4 of their last 6, but then beat Texas this past week. TCU also this year won at West Virginia in double overtime. And actually, to tell you the truth, and this might make Sooner fans feel a little better, TCU has actually played better this year on the road. They're only, matter of fact, they've only lost 1 road game this year, and that was at Oklahoma State. They've lost 3 home games to K-State, no shame in that. They lost in triple overtime to Texas Tech, and then we mentioned the Iowa State loss. But the key last week for TCU was the fact, 2 things. 1, they were able to limit Texas's ground game. Texas, that's the meat and potatoes of the Longhorns, being able to establish the ground game. And Longhorns had under 90 yards rushing. So credit TCU for that. Number 2, forcing turnovers. TCU forced 4 of them. That right there, big reason why the Horned Frogs were able to pull off the victory in Austin to move to 7-4. You talk about this being a big game for Oklahoma. This is a big game for TCU too, because Gary Patterson, I promise you this, he's really preaching to this team how big this game is as far as really establishing belonging in the Big 12. Patterson will really preach to this team that they have an opportunity to beat Texas and to beat Oklahoma in back-to-back weeks in their first year as a Big 12 member, to beat the 2 most successful programs in the league's history, and to be able to do it in back-to-back weeks. That right there is a great way to end your regular season, going to the bowl game with a lot of momentum, being able to go into next year with a lot of momentum, and that is a huge selling point in recruiting, to go into a living room and tell a recruit, you know what, we ended the season by beating Texas and Oklahoma. That right there shows that TCU does belong in the Big 12 Conference. So this is a huge selling point game for the TCU Horned Frogs. No, they can't win the Big 12. No, they can't go to a major bowl game with a victory on Saturday, but they can make a statement, and defensively, they're going to feel like they can really contain Oklahoma's ground attack because they were able to do so against Texas. And for Oklahoma, plain and simple, they got to be able to establish a ground game to make life easier for Landry Jones and company. As far as defensively for Oklahoma, the Sooners, we know about their struggles, for the past 2 weeks, giving up nearly 100 combined points against West Virginia and against Oklahoma State. One of the big problems has been containing the ground game, and they're going to have an issue this week because they're going against a mobile quarterback in Trevon Boykin. Last week, Boykin, I believe, was TCU's leading rusher. Saw the issues that the Sooners had last week with Clint Shelf, a quarterback with those QB draws. Well, Boykin is an athletic quarterback too, and I think he's even faster than Shelf. And also, too, you can't ignore Matthew Tucker. Now, TCU may not have the passing game that OSU and West Virginia had, but believe me, the ground game is going to be enough to where the front 7 of OU better be ready. TCU's ground game is one that you're going to have to really, really watch out for. And again, the defense of TCU, I think it's a better defense than what OU has seen in at least the past 4 weeks. My final thoughts on this game, look, for the Sooners, I know there's going to be a lot of scoreboard watching going on over the weekend, okay? Sooners need to take care of business. Yeah, we know that when they wake up on Saturday, they're going to know if Kent State won or lost. And, of course, once the OU-TCU game is over, they're going to find out if they still have a shot at sharing or winning the Big 12 championship outright, depending on what happens with Texas and Kansas State. But if the Sooners are not fully focused on TCU, OU will get beat, plain and simple. And then you can say bye-bye BCS and bye-bye outright Big 12 championship. Sooners need to worry about Fort Worth. They need to worry about TCU and getting that 10th victory. I don't think OU will score as many points in this game, but I don't think they'll give up as many either. For TCU, give them credit for beating Texas, but quite honestly, this week they're not going against David Ash or Case McCoy. They're going against a better quarterback than Landry Jones, and I think Landry makes enough plays, especially in the second half, for OU to pull away in the fourth quarter. Look for OU to win. I'm going to go 31-20. I think OU wins by 11 and nails victory number 10. BCS bid or no BCS bid, I'll look for OU to at least end the regular season on a high note after that heartbreaking loss to Notre Dame back in October. Sooners to win and to go to 10-2, that's my prediction. My final college football pick show between me and the coin will take place on Thursday, so make sure to check it out on Thursday, November the 29th. And a reminder, I will have my post-game show of OU and TCU Saturday afternoon, so please check it out. And by the way, for 3.5 hours Saturday night, I will be rooting for the Texas Longhorns, assuming that Oklahoma could beat TCU, and that's a big assumption that Texas can pull off the win, and that way that'll make it possible for Oklahoma to win the Big 12 championship outright. Go Sooners, and for 3.5 hours on Saturday night, oh, may my children forgive me for this, go Longhorns. Boomer Sooner.